Today's project is this chubby heart. I will place it here and show you what you'll need. You will need a crochet hook. Today I'll be using my 2.5mm clover hook. You'll need a stitch marker, a sewing needle, a pair of scissors, some toy stuffing to stuff our chubby heart, and some yarn. Today I'll be making a pink heart, but you can make it in any color you wish. But today, pink will be our color palette. Pick up your pink yarn and make a slip knot. Attach it to your hook and chain 2 stitches. In the second chain from your hook, place 6 single crochets. I shall speed up the video a little and meet you at the end of round 1. Excellent! With all 6 stitches done, we're going to place our stitch marker in the very last stitch that we created so that we know where the end of the round is. If there's a hole forming in the center of your work, grab your yarn tail end and give it a tug to close it, and we'll move on to round 2. For round 2, we're going to do an increase into each of the 6 stitches of round 1, and by that I mean we're going to place 2 single crochets into each of the 6 stitches. At the end of round 2, you will have 12 stitches in total. Let's meet back at the end of the round. Replace your stitch marker. And again, if a hole is forming, give your yarn tail a little tug to close it. And we'll move on to round 3. For round 3, we're going to do a single crochet followed by an increase. And we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 3, you will have 18 stitches. Let's start round 4. For round 4, we're going to do 2 single crochets followed by an increase, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 4, you will have 24 stitches. Great, we're making excellent progress. For this next round, round 5, we're just going to do single crochets all of the way around. At this point, we're going to detach the part we've made from our working yarn. Leave a little bit of a length in case we need that later for sewing, but grab your scissors and make a snip. Pull your yarn through the last stitch you created, and briefly set this piece aside as we're going to move on to the next part of the project and come back to it in a moment. Let's grab our pink yarn again and make a slip knot. Attach it to our hook, and then chain 2 stitches. In the second chain from the hook, place 6 single crochets. Like before, place your stitch marker in the very last stitch that you created, and if a hole is forming in your work, give your yarn tail a little tug to close it. And we'll move on to round 2. For round 2, we're going to be placing an increase into each of the 6 stitches of round 1. At the end of round 2, you will have 12 stitches. Replace your stitch marker, and if needed, give your yarn tail a little tug to close any holes forming in the center of your work, and we'll move on to round 3, which is going to be a single crochet followed by an increase for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 3, you will have 18 stitches. Awesome! Round 4 is up next, and round 4 is 2 single crochets followed by an increase. At the end of round 4, you will have 24 stitches. And for the final time, we will do round 5 again. For round 5, it's just single crochets all of the way around. Let's meet back at the end of this round, and make sure you do not cut that working yarn, as we want to keep it attached to this part of the heart. Sweet! We have made 2 parts exactly the same, one which is still attached to our working yarn and one that we removed from our working yarn. We're now going to move on to attaching both of these parts together and continuing the project. Remembering we have one piece that is attached to our working yarn still, let's place that down, and we're going to pick up the other piece which is not attached to our working yarn. On this piece, we're going to look for where our last stitch was and count back 4 stitches. We're then going to pick up the piece that is attached to both our hook and our working yarn, and we're going to push our hook through the other part at that 4th stitch we just counted out. Now pick up your working yarn and yarn over your hook. Pull the yarn through the first stitch, and now you'll have 2 loops on your hook like this, and then yarn over and finish off making the stitch. Now this first stitch I do not count as stitch 1, and I'll explain why. We're going to go round the part and stitch 23 single crochets, and the 24th single crochet will be placed in the front loop of the stitch we've just made. And then we will continue making 24 single crochets on the other side. So this will be round 6, and in total at the end of round 6 you will have 48 stitches. One last thing to mention is this yarn tail on the first part that we made, and we want to secure that. In order to do that, we're going to be working it into the next 2 stitches. Place it on top of your work and make your stitches around it as normal. Again, just do that for 2 stitches, and then we can tuck it away in case we need it later. Continue round 6, remembering that the first part is going to be made up of 23 single crochets, with the 24th one being in the front loop of the stitch that we did at the very start. Then you'll continue doing another 24 stitches on the other circle. So that you're clear how to do the 24th stitch, let's meet back after the first 23 stitches and I'll talk you through it. Perfect, that's the first 23 stitches complete, and the 24th stitch will go in the front loop of the joining stitch we created at the start of this round. Perfect, that's us halfway through the round as we've done 24 stitches on this side, and we're going to continue by doing another 24 stitches on the other side, so at the end of round 6 we'll have 48 stitches. Perfect! That's round 6 complete, and you can see in the middle that we have joined both of the parts together. For round 7, we're going to do 48 single crochets around both of the loops and meet back at the end of the round. Now that round 7 is complete, we'll stop here briefly, just in case you're needing to tidy up the join in the middle. You'll remember in the very first part that we made that when we cut our working yarn, we left enough yarn to sew. So if needed, we can use that yarn tail to sew and neaten up the join in the middle. Once you've completed that, we'll meet back and continue the project. Now for round 8. For round 8, we're going to start decreasing our work. We will start with doing 6 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease using the next 2 stitches. As this is the first invisible decrease we have done in this project, I would like to talk you through it. So let's get the first 6 single crochets out of the way, and then I can talk you through the invisible decrease. To create an invisible decrease, we're going to grab the front loops only of the next 2 stitches. Then yarn over and pull the yarn through both of those loops until you've got 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and then complete the stitch as normal. Continue the rest of this round by doing 6 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease. At the end of round 8, you will have 42 stitches. Round 9 is very straightforward. All we're going to do is single crochets all of the way around. Excellent! We can now start seeing that our heart is slowly getting bigger. We can move on to round 10 now, and for round 10 we're going to do 5 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease, and we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 10 you will have 36 stitches. Now for round 11. For round 11, we will do single crochets all of the way around. And just like that, round 11 is complete. I'm going to quickly pause and tuck in all of these yarn ends into the centre of my heart as they keep getting in my way. Now for round 12. Round 12 is 4 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease, and again we'll do that for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 12 you will have 30 stitches. Round 13 is up next, and for that we're just going to do some simple single crochets all of the way around. For round 14, we're going to continue to decrease, and to do that we will do 3 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 14, you'll have 24 stitches. For round 15, we're back to some single crochets for the entire round. Wonderful! For round 16, we're going to do 2 single crochets followed by an invisible decrease for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 16, you'll have 18 stitches. Now for round 17, and we're back to some single crochets for the entirety of the round. Let's meet back at the end of this round, as I would like to talk you through the next stage of the project. Let's secure our work at this point, as I would like us to pause as it's time to start stuffing our chubby heart. Grab some toy stuffing and start ripping it apart. I like to do this as I don't want my work to be lumpy and bumpy. Take a piece of toy stuffing and start stuffing your chubby heart. You want it to be stuffed well, as after all, you've got a lot of love to give. Continue stuffing your heart until you're happy, and let's meet back to continue the project. Now that our chubby heart is stuffed, we can continue. Remove the stitch marker and reattach your work to your hook. Pick your stitch marker back up and place it in the last stitch you created of the last round. And let's continue on to round 18. For round 18, it's a single crochet followed by an invisible decrease for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 18, you'll have 12 stitches. Replace your stitch marker, and I've got a little bit of fluff I need to remove here. And now we can start round 19, which is just single crochets for the entirety of the round. With round 19 complete, I would suggest securing your work at this point. This is going to be our last opportunity to stuff our chubby heart before we start closing our work. So go ahead and grab some toy stuffing and continue to stuff your heart. We have made it to round 20. This is our final round of crochet before we start closing our work. Reattach your work to your hook and replace your stitch marker in the last stitch you created of the last round. For round 20, we're going to do invisible decreases for the entirety of the round. At the end of round 20, you'll be left with 6 stitches. We'll meet back at the end of this round, as I would like to talk you through closing up your work. Now that you've completed the last stitch of round 20, we're going to grab a length of yarn that we can use for sewing and closing our work up and take a snip. We then want to pull the yarn through the final stitch that we created. And I'll now talk you through how we close up that hole at the bottom of our heart. To close up our work, we want to attach our yarn to our yarn needle, and it's very straightforward. We have 6 stitches left, and all we're going to do is grab the front loops of 2 stitches at a time. So stitches 1 and 2, and pull that yarn through. Now grab the front loops of stitches 3 and 4, and again pull the yarn all the way through, and you'll see the hole is starting to close. Finally, grab the front loops of stitches 5 and 6. And just like that, our work is fully closed. I like to pass my needle through the area we just closed up and push it back out somewhere else in the heart so that I can weave in the ends. So go ahead and weave in the ends of your yarn and we'll meet back here. Wonderful, we have completed our chubby heart, and you can make them in any colour you wish, and they make great gifts for friends and family. As always, thank you so much for joining me in this tutorial.